where you enter the building. When you walked in, you were asked to sign a photo and filming form. If you are not comfortable being filmed, just raise your hand and we can come around with an orange lanyard. But if you're okay with that, thank you. That just helps us to promote the event and live stream it. But if anyone is not comfortable, please feel free to say hello to Matthew.
Yep.
And he can hook you up with an orange lanyard. Okay? So just to introduce myself, my name is Sonali Shukla. Hao Young just kindly invited me to be the host for today's event. This is a great event because I'm a careers consultant here at Cambridge, so my job is helping all of you, whether you're an undergraduate student or a postdoc, to figure out what you're doing with your career. But I'm also a former astrophysicist, so I am delighted to be kind of playing both roles today of hosting the event, talking to you a little bit about careers, but then also facilitating the conversation among my fellow former astrophysicists. Just as a reminder, how many, or just as with a show of hands, how many of you have used the career service, know anything about the career service? That includes our panelists. Excellent, so some of our panelists have used it as well. If you haven't used the career service, just a quick plug that we are there for you to have any conversation from I don't know what I'm doing to I know exactly what I'm doing and I need help applying. So that's always there for you. All of the panelists today are going to give you a little overview of their career, and I thought I would start just by talking very briefly about my background, and it's quite squiggly, quite diverse. So I finished my PhD eons ago in the US. It included a pre-doctoral fellowship at Spitzer headquarters at Caltech, and I moved to Penn State for a 3-year postdoc. But you can see from 2009 to 2011, that's only 2 years. And that's because very quickly into my postdoc, I decided I don't really want to be an academic researcher anymore. So I completed 2 years of the postdoc, I left a year of funding, and I moved on to something else. And that something else was very vague. I was a faculty research associate / coordinator at the University of Maryland. But it ended up being an amazing position because it allowed me to build all sorts of skills in outreach, in event planning, in academic advising that I still use today that actually opened the door for all the other various careers that I've had. I then moved to the UK. I followed my husband, and I almost kind of had to start at ground zero again looking for jobs. So I started out here doing outreach for the Institute of Astronomy. I don't know if any of you go to the Wednesday public evenings, I'm sure the CUAS folks do. That was a fixed-term position, and during that position, I was expecting my first child. So I actually had a job break of being a mom, and my son was about a year and a bit when I applied to then be the public engagement coordinator for the full university, so not just doing astronomy, but doing that. I was in that position for all of 2 months when somebody emailed me and said, Sonali, have you seen this job? It's to be a careers consultant. They want someone with a physical sciences background that understands PhDs and postdocs. And I thought, that's just really too good to pass up. And I applied for my current position, which started out as a careers advisor and is now a careers consultant. I've kept my finger in the astronomy pot of being a tutor for PACE, formerly ICE, so I teach the odd astro course. So that's my brief career history. If you can all take a moment to scan this code, we're going to be asking just a couple of quick questions on Ernest here. And I think the folks online can do this as well, right? Okay, so I might have to help you. Do I go ahead? Well, I'll leave the code up for a minute. Excellent. So if I put that way, that's going to be okay, perfect. Yeah, sure. So it looks like we've got a really healthy mix of undergrads through to postdocs, and one faculty member. I think that's our panelist. That's great. Yeah, and just really quickly, how did you hear about our talk today? So I think the department mailings were very effective, word of mouth, and the CUAS folks. And someone saw the poster, excellent. It's a very good poster, I like it. Okay. And then just to kind of get an idea of what your questions are, so we can kind of make the most of that, just a moment to let us know what you want to hear about today. Okay, so career options, funding, research jobs in industry, 21 centimeter. That might be slightly off topic, but I like it. Let's see, transferable skills, astronomy research, astronaut, excellent. PhD, yeah, so some of you might be considering a PhD. Do I really want to do a PhD or not? Personal experiences, yeah. And that's one thing that I do want to pass on from the organizers, is that this is about kind of sharing the journey, the decision making, the kind of the personal side of things. So hopefully that will come out from our panelists. Yeah, some questions about re-entering academia, career progression, catharsis. That one's nice. Yes. How do we get to that page? Great. Thanks. And please feel free to keep adding those ideas. You all have access to Mentimeter. So we'll also be using Mentimeter to get quotes and to get questions from you guys. So please do feel free to add questions to Mentimeter as we go. All right, so very quick thanks to the organizing committee. We have Hao Young right here, who's the brains behind this. Matthew, who was with the artist line, there he is, hello. And then Amanda, Shirishi, and Charlotte, who are all past committee members. If any of you are interested in joining this group, they are looking for new committee members, so come and talk to Hao Young afterwards. And if you're not a member of CUAS, join the mailing list. You get access to the telescopes, it's fantastic, so keep that in mind as well. I will now invite our first panelist to come up. The way that this will work is we'll have a brief introduction from each of the panelists. They'll do just as I did and walk through their career journey. And then we're going to have a conversation among panelists before opening it up to questions from the audience. So if I can have Priscilla, Mr. Jessica, and Nicolas. Come on. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. So I'm Priscilla Canizares. I'm very happy to be here today to share my career path, which is not straight, it's more like a wheel. These are mostly the bullet points. So I did my PhD in theoretical physics in Barcelona, and I came back here to the UK at the Institute of Astronomy with a fellowship for the Catalan ministry, and also the Marie Curie fellowship. I was working in gravitational waves. By the time no gravitational waves were detected, they were all like speculations, kind of. Lego was in construction, ESA was in planning, and I did my PhD in ESA. When I came here, the ASTI was postponed 10 years because they decided to go for X-ray mission instead for a gravitational wave mission, which was a big blow up. Then I decided to move to Hague. This is what to say that there is a bit of transferable skills between both fields because they're mostly the same, different frequencies but the same instrument. When I came at the end of my fellowship, so it was a bit of a big leap for me. It was not really a nice situation for gravitational astronomy. It was postponed. no very career perspective because gravitational waves, I say, it wasn't detected yet, so don't count. Yeah, so it was a very big, it wasn't a very good situation. I was questioning everything about career, about life, about decisions. I came down to postdocs because I wasn't feeling like moving again. So during my postdoc, I traveled many times. And I wasn't really in a place that I wanted to move again, start again. So I decided to stay here in the UK for a little bit more. But eventually I took a postdoc in the Netherlands. But then my girl came. That was most like a decision. But I decided to came back to the UK where my partner was at the time. And then I found out that I wanted to be a mom, so I didn't feel like traveling every now and then, getting my child in a nursery. I just wanted to be there for her. So I stopped research, and then when she was 3 years old, so I wanted to come back, but the situation wasn't very nice. The gravitational wave group here in Cambridge was dissolved. There wasn't much thing going on here. I was uncle here because my partner is in industry, it's not an academic. So then I decided to go to corporate job, which was very good actually for family life. You work 9 to 5, no weekends, really, I couldn't stay with my daughter. But then, I wanted more. She went to school and I was free, so I decided to come back to research again. And luckily I got a Daphne fellowship, and here I am. So I'm doing more like applied maths at the moment in the realm of scientific machine learning. So basically I'm developing algorithmic tools for astronomic research in particular. So I'm basically merging my background in gravitational waves astronomy with computational science and mathematics and everything. So this is a very exciting time of my life at the moment. So yeah, mostly I think it was a fun time. So that's all. If you want to know anything more, it's a little later. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon everybody. So my name is Richard. So I started academic life as an undergrad in physics up at the University of Sheffield. And I think the next sort of big milestone in my life is moving back with my parents after undergrad and wondering what on earth to do with my future. So the first thing I did was apply for a job as close to home as possible. My parents lived in Cambridge, so that I could stay living there for free. So I got a job as a lab tech here at the university in the semiconductor physics lab, at which point my parents said, right, you've got a job, out you go find your own place to live. So all planned for that. But that job was pretty good because it gave me a good insight into how research and academia really works. I was a lab tech working with PhD students and postdocs just to go to Cavendish, which ultimately led me to do my PhD here at the Babcock with Didier Queloz in expert detection. So I was there for 4 years from 2015 to 2019. And at the end of that, I think I just wanted something a bit more stable, a bit more 9 to 5, a bit more regular. And there wasn't really any decision-making process because I got approached out the blue on LinkedIn from a recruiter saying, hey, would you consider a job in software? And I was like, well, my PhD funding is about to run out, so yes, I'd love a job, thanks very much. And it was the first person to sort of reach to me out of the blue. I wasn't headhunted, I'm sure they were spamming everybody with PhDs in their LinkedIn profiles. But the company I ended up working with were fantastic. Software consulting for sort of big data applications in banking and finance and insurance. It was a very much sort of stable 9 to 5, nothing to do with academia kind of role. In that time, got married, bought a house, started a family, what you do, and then after a while you start to get a little bit bored and wonder what else could be out there. So I knew I wanted to come back to the world of science and technology, moved back to Cambridge because my previous job was down in London, and ended up where I am now, which is working in venture capital, but working with a deep tech VC fund here in Cambridge. It works very closely with the university. And so my job now is to talk to Cambridge startups, talk to PhD students and postdocs that are thinking of spinning out their research, and if possible, try and help them on their funding. So.
Now we've got Jess. Do you want to use the big one?
It's okay. Yeah, so hi, I'm Jess. So I started out doing my undergrad in physics here at Cambridge. I was doing natural sciences. Originally, I actually planned to do particle physics. So then, after my third year, I was a summer student at CERN, and that actually made me realise that particle physics wasn't for me. Like, in some ways, I really loved it, but the actual, like, you know, the research, like, there's so many people working on everything, and it's quite overwhelming. And so then going to my fourth year of undergrad, I was like, what should I do? And then I went to the career service. I was like, oh, I'm kind of interested in this machine learning thing that's starting to blow up. And they were like, well, if you want to go into data science, like maybe an astronomy PhD would be a good thing to do. So then I ended up doing an astronomy PhD here at the IRA. That was actually nothing to do with machine learning, though. Like, that was all doing like simulations. So I was like writing dynamical simulations of dust in planetary systems. And then coming up towards the end of my PhD, I was really torn between academia and industry. And I spent a lot of time deliberating. So what I ended up doing was doing a postdoc, which was also in Cambridge. I basically got to stay in my research group. But then I quickly realised after starting the postdoc that it wasn't for me. I think academia comes with a lot of downsides, and for me the upsides weren't worth it. So I started looking for jobs, and then I ended up at Panellists. So now I'm a machine learning engineer at a climate tech startup, and we're basically trying to do AI control of cement kilns, because cement is like 8% of global emissions, so we're trying to optimise the process and reduce a lot of carbon emissions.
Thank you, Jess. And last but not least,
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Nicolas. So I'm from France. When I was 18, I moved to Paris to do my undergrad in physics and chemistry. After that, I did a master in engineering and telecommunication, and an Erasmus at UCL to study research science in spacecraft technology and satellite communication. After that, I worked for 4 years for Nicolas, so it's a satellite operator in Paris to build some platform for satellites, TV, radio, data. After 4 years, I was a bit bored, I wanted a new challenge and go back to a scientific field, so I had the chance to do my PhD here in Cambridge with Professor Eloy Acedo, who is here today. So in instrumentation, so I worked in Kira, I designed a receiver for this radio telescope. After 4 years, a bit like Rich, I hesitated between a postdoc and a career in industry, and I was contacted by Lindley by Airbus Defence Space. It has been very quick and straightforward. A couple of interviews later, I received an offer as an antenna engineer, and I've been designing active antenna for 6 years for telecommunication spacecraft, interplanetary, and sense mission for ESA, for example, for spacecraft to monitor sun activity or future lunar space station.
great. Fantastic. Thank you all. I noticed some definite themes coming out of that. I think what's really interesting is just this idea of boredom, like trying something and wanting to be curious and find something else. I think that's a very astrophysical quality. I don't hear that in the panels that I often run. Do any of you have questions after hearing the story from one another? Or shall I start you off? Yeah. So, is there anything that surprised you about your first post-PhD position?
Perhaps I can, okay,
Yeah.
perhaps I can start. And so in industry, so it was a bit different. Like the way we work is really like we need to work and deliver project on time and on budget. So we have strong constraints, and sometimes we're a bit frustrated because we don't have time to fully understand the whole system or to provide the best design. You have to do the work in the time you have.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of the big differences in in your case, during your PhD you have more time to go deeper in understanding of the system and in industry. You are going depend on your customer and less time and budget constraints. So it was probably the first thing which surprised me when I started my job in industry.
Yeah. Have any of you had that similar sort of experience?
Yeah,
Or different?
The path is yeah, in industry things are much quicker because we have to produce resources faster. We don't have the chance to deeply dive into the curiosity, let's say, you want to investigate something, what is going on, why that's happening. We don't have much of a chance, so basically it's like more practical in a sense, right?
Yeah. So less of that time for exploration.
That's it, yeah.
Anything else that surprised you?
We need an extra couple of mics, please. Yeah, so the company I worked for, the software company after my PhD, was actually quite academic in nature. So they typically hired people who had done a PhD or a postdoc and maybe looking to broaden their horizons a bit, but they still tried to foster that academic environment. So we were encouraged to follow curiosity and to spend a bit of extra time, doing stuff that might be deemed a waste of time in a more sort of rigid industry setting. But equally, sometimes you would have a customer who can promise something by a certain date, and you're working with a big team of people from offices all around the world, and you have to deliver it on that time. But outside of those quite huge projects, you're sort of free to explore anything that sort of caught your interest, which was a surprise to me because I wasn't expecting that. I was assuming it's going to be very rigid in industrial setting, but actually it was quite pleasantly surprising in that way.
Yeah, yeah. And absolutely, that's something, as you're exploring different industries, understanding that culture, particularly ones that do have a lot of hires from academia, it can have changed the tone and the culture. Jess, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the last 2 points. For me, it was actually a plus that you don't go down lots of rabbit holes. You get a lot more variety in what you work on. For me, I find that a lot more interesting. I guess maybe another thing that surprised me. This probably varies depending what you work on, but for me, I find industry a lot more collaborative. We have a small team and we all work together. We often pair on things and stuff like that. Whereas my PhD was very much I am in my office on my own. I check in with my supervisor once a week, so that was a very nice change as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This is maybe for those of you that have, like me, graduated some time ago, but how do you think the academic job market has changed since you left your PhD?
It's really tough. I think, yeah, the expectations have raised, and as well as a lot of politics involved, right? So, you meant that, particularly in the UK. So now there's a lot of problems with students, taking postdocs, not so policy maybe because they cannot afford it. It's like, yes, getting tough in that sense. But also I think it has evolved in the sense that it's looking more into equality and diversity than in the past. There's more awareness. I wouldn't say that there are many things done, but there's awareness, at least people think about these things. Before, no one would think about these things. They would just not think exactly. So nowadays, there are groups and initiatives that raise issues around all these topics about diversity. There are more opportunities in that area. Not many, but there are. Before we were not. So that's the difference.
Is there anything that any of you really miss about the research environment? I know, Priscilla, you talked about coming back to it.
My case was different, I think, because I was looking for a job. I wanted to map myself from academia to industry, which is not easy when you don't have much experience, you don't know what the corporative market is, or where to move, or where to go. Academic service at the time was helpful. You know, to write even a CV that is not an academic CV, that's difficult. It really is difficult. I mean, you just kind of stay there. Well, perhaps now you can use ChatGPT, but I mean, really, you have to put yourself in someone else's foot, someone that you know. So that was a big challenge. Then my background was astronomy with or with computational science, like because I'm having to do software and so on. I mean, the job market was okay. I come up myself. So eventually I got a position as an applied mathematician. So that was completely, you know, out. I wouldn't thought about applying for applied mathematician position at all. But that was what fitted my profile and my CV the best. I was in a big company. It was in a startup, obviously. So the culture was very rigid. It was flexible on the schedule, and it was very nice people. But you could find different ecosystems and different, not always welcoming and some hostile. One of the things that pushed me to come back to academia was that I didn't like the experience there. Perhaps I could have changed jobs, but I felt that in the time I was there, I was stuck. I didn't have a chance to evolve my skills or evolve, learn different things to put myself at the level of the market out there. So coming back to academia has helped me to kind of repurpose my skills and put me up to base, basically. This is one of the other reasons that I decided to go back.
Is there anything, if you could go back and kind of redesign your PhD to better prepare you for your career choice, is there anything you would change about the PhD process? I know, Jess, you mentioned that you did the PhD kind of to build up those data science skills, but then that wasn't quite what happened. So it's quite a broad question it can be in terms of preparing for an academic or a career. Yeah, go for it.
I think maybe I wouldn't necessarily change that much because it's a journey that you go through and it has its ups and its downs, and a lot of it's quite tough and you feel like you're sitting against the wall quite a bit, but that's where you learn most about yourself and you overcome some of the tougher challenges of your PhD. And naively, if I were to redesign my PhD, it would be to make all those problems go away, but then I wouldn't learn anything really, which then wouldn't have meant I could do a difficult job in software or in venture capital now to understand some of the hard parts of world of science and tech. So I think maybe I wouldn't change much because it has its problems and its ups and downs, like I say, but they are what the PhD is and how it's all formed. So I'd say maybe not much at all. Although in one very particular niche case, my PhD was meant to be experimental and it ended up being all theoretical, mostly because my lab was full of asbestos and it took 3 years for them to clear it out because it actually was going to take a few months. So, but again, I'm going to change that because it got me a job in software. So it's it's hard to say what to change, what we can change. So.
Fantastic. Anyone else?
So the topic like which I think I found the transition from PhD to industry quite straightforward when you do a PhD instrumentation, because the university has the Postdoc Centre top-notch, DNA top-notch instruments, but which are used in industry. Also have access to a lot of software. So I learned how to use that software during my PhD to and this is like the stuff that we keep using every day in industry. So yeah, use the resource that you have, but you have access to software and instruments. So use that. You can easily go to industry. And also, as Rich mentioned, struggling during your PhD, and it's a part of learning, and I found a big difference with say new engineer with a PhD or only a master. Difference in the way they approach a problem. With a PhD, you are much more independent to just describe the problem, and the engineer will find its way. Whereas sometimes with just a master, we struggle a bit more to find the resource and to take a certain problem. So it's really a big plus. You struggle during your PhD, and it makes your life a bit easier because you know how to solve the same problems.
Yeah, that's usually from a career's perspective, no matter what discipline your PhD is in, that ability to independently problem solve is what kind of discerns the candidate with a PhD from anyone else. So it's absolutely, the struggle is helpful, not always fun, but it's there. I think we'll go to audience questions now. We'll start with those of you in the room. Does anyone have a question?
I can shout.
I think it's more for the people
Oh, for the
online.
people.
That's okay, yeah. Thanks.
Thanks very much. I noticed that a few of you not only had transitioned out of academia into industry, but a few of you also came back. I was wondering how you found that process and whether you thought it was more difficult or whether other people might have had advantages if they had just sort of stayed in academia all the way compared to having gotten some experience outside of academia first.
Yes, good question. So for me, I just was recap slide. Finished my PhD, worked in software for a few years, and then came to venture capital, but it's very sort of university based. And I think I would have found half of my job very difficult if I hadn't had that time outside of academia, because it's a lot of what I do is obviously going to research labs or meeting with postdocs and PhD students and understanding the problems that they're solving and how they're trying to incorporate or spin out their research. But also a lot of it is understanding the broader picture of the corporate world. So how do corporate structures exist? How do we get funding? What are the funding structures available to startups? And how do we as a fund get funding to then deploy into startups? And I think that half of the world is quite difficult to understand if you've only been in academia. So I would say it was beneficial for me to step into both, but not saying that it's impossible either. So
Anyone else? Thank you. Thanks, Richard. Any other questions? Yes, I will get my exercise up. While I'm walking, if you want to, there have been some questions put on the Mentimeter. If you want to upvote any of those, feel free to take a look.
Let's vote for the questions. So we have a lot of questions now, so we can vote actually if you can. Yeah.
Okay, hi. Yeah, so I'm going to ask a somewhat provocative question, but I hope it's okay. I mean, where I'm coming from is I teach a lot of undergraduate students who often ask me about careers and doing a PhD and so on and so on. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. But the question is, clearly it sounds as though you are quite happy with the careers you've ended up in. The question is, were those jobs that you are in now, were they jobs that only paid the same as an equivalently aged postdoc? Would you be as happy in those jobs? Because I'm wondering whether the main difference in non-academic jobs, that is the thing that attracts people to them, is simply the fact that they get paid twice as much money. How important is that, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I'm going to be honest with you, when I was thinking, it was also a big part of this equation. The stability, you have a job to think about what you will do in 2 years, and the salary, yes. We have to be honest. I think when I compare the numbers, not after the factor 2, but it was after 50, it was for me, it was.
I think it's me, like, my main motivation to leave was like having like real world impact. So for me, it was, my research was very theoretical, and it was all like, in 20 years' time when we look at habitable planets, like it might be relevant, but I was like, I want to do something now, and I want to help climate change. So for me, it was like the reward of, having impact.
Yeah, I think a bit more candid from me. It was predominantly financially driven. Which to say it was a very attractive offer from a good company. I thought it might be crazy to turn it down, if I'm honest.
For me, the same, but the money wasn't my main driver, my motivation. Otherwise, I would have been coming back to corporate world. The Daphne Jackson Fellowship is part-time. I'm working full-time. Academia is not well paid. Is a very hostile environment. Everyone can tell stories. No one, I think everyone is open about. It's very difficult to navigate academia if you don't have good networking, good connections, and a right place to start. It's just for a few. It's starting to change, but it's difficult to make it way. So no wonder what people ask, well, look outside academia. The main problem is that people that have been, like me, that we have been always in academia. When you think about moving out of academia, which I don't like saying moving out of academia, just moving to a corporate world instead of academic world. They're not moving out of anywhere. It's because we don't know what it is out there. We know our environment, we know how academia is, we know what to expect, but we don't know what is out there. And that puts back puts us out of people about moving and do the decision when we really much better off really. So yeah, it's a bit of a controversial question, but it's not just about the money, it's also about the life quality as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to add my 2 bits. Is salary, of course, salary helps, but like for me, I think it was a combination of real impact and competition. Astronomy and astrophysics is incredibly competitive, and I wasn't thriving in that hyper-competitive environment. And that was a real driver to move away from that. I wanted to be able to do my job and be good at it without feeling like I'm constantly needing to publish first and to, climb that ladder within academia. I think we'll take one more question. There's another question on this row, and then we're going to move to the online questions. So feel free to submit a question online.
Hi, thanks so much for your panel discussion. My question concerns when you did that switch out of the PhD. How did you sort of think of what were the transferable skills, or how do I value myself as a PhD student for either the postdoc or afterwards, especially for industry? How did you think about, okay, this is what I've done, and how can I be valuable to a company and an employer that might not really understand what doing a PhD entails?
So, I think I mentioned the company I worked for after my PhD was very used to hiring ex-PhDs and postdocs from places like Cambridge, Oxford, and Imperial, and so on. So I think they were quite used to the working mindset of people with PhDs. But I'd say the thing that, or I guess the transferable skill that I used the most was probably teaching, in terms of explaining quite complex concepts to people in a way that gets the point across succinctly, because the tools we were using, the solutions we were building were very, very complex software products to be used in enterprise. And you've got to very quickly be able to distill a complex idea down into its key components to an audience of people who might be expert programmers or from the C-suite of the big bank who don't care about fine details. And so through the PhD, whether you do teaching, supervisions, or present at conferences, I think you get quite good at explaining things to different audiences. So I'd say that's the skill that I probably didn't appreciate that I had from my PhD, that enabled me to do quite well in my space.
I really didn't jump after my PhD because I knew that I wanted to keep going. But yeah, I think I would agree about explaining, getting more society. You know, the teaching part is important. Being a good communicator is important. One thing that also was very helpful was the computational skills I gained. That we can use them elsewhere. These were basically very important. You know, what's going on, how we model gravitational field, you know. That was open.
Yeah, I think for me it was quite similar that I think technical communication is like a very important skill. Like you're not just talking to other technical people, you're like talking to product people and like developing a product together. You're often talking to customers and like translating their problems into an actual solution. And I think the other thing like we kind of already mentioned is like doing a PhD means you're very good at problem solving and like where we work, like we're doing research into something that no one's ever done before. So, you know, we have a really hard problem to solve, so it can give you a big issue.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, yeah, problem solving, as you mentioned, to work independently, to find solution alone is also very important. Skills that you can learn during PhD, and in my case, all the technical skills, maybe not in design. I want to quickly design an antenna during my PhD. This is what I'm doing now every day. So, all the theory, all the software, coding also is also an important part. Coding like that during my PhD. In industry, so yeah, for me, depend on the job you choose, but for me it's better to transfer all the skills and the transition between the PhD and job in industry. What seems to be best.
Great. So you can see there's quite a mix from, you know, the day-to-day actual coding and skills that seem obviously part of the PhD to all the purple stuff as well. So the most popular question online is, how did you manage to figure out where to switch to once you realized the current field wasn't for you?
For me, it was just total luck. There was no plan. Like I said, like as much as I despise it, I think it's the most cringeworthy place in the world. Linkedin has got me a job twice in a row. So I'd say use it to your advantage, and then read all the rubbish that's posted on there. But yeah, I just got lucky, I think.
In the careers world, we call it planned happenstance.
Sure.
So it's luck if you're ready for it.
So yeah, it was much of a plan, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so in my case, it was, yeah, when I was looking for stability, I think I was not able to jump from one position to another one every 2 or 3 years. Because a few years ago, at the end of my PhD, I was 33. So at that time, I thought I wanted something more stable. Now, it's actually too old, you can do because it's not a problem after if you want to do a postdoc at 35, switch to industry. I think the transition from academia to industry, if you work in a technical field, instrumentation, simulation, and like this, I think things are like that's not
So one thing I forgot to mention earlier when I was wondering about myself was, so after I decided I was interested in machine learning, I did an internship between my master's and PhD, and I think that was like a really nice way to like try out a field I might be interested in and see if it might be for me. So I think for me it was like trying something out and being like, hey, that's actually quite cool.
For me also was kind of luck. Just try to do what it was out there that would fit what I believe. Yeah, it's keeping us feeling and look for opportunities that you think you will like or you will fit basically with the job.
So this kind of segues into the next question, which is how easy or difficult did you find it to find the next job post PhD or postdoc? I think I didn't find it difficult, but I took a lot of time. So I took probably 6 to 8 months of exploring because I wasn't willing to leave for just anything. Lots of what we call in the US informational interviews, so just talking to people exactly like what you're doing now, finding out about that. So it wasn't necessarily difficult, but it did take time.
And in terms of mindset as well, I think that was the hard change your mindset. How things work in academia and how things work in the comparative work is different. You have to be a different mindset.
So moving from software to where I work now in venture capital probably took me about a year, I think, and it was a sort of a long and winding road in terms of figuring out that maybe I wanted to change, which is a big decision to make in the first place when you've been working somewhere for 5 or 6 years and it's quite stable and everything. And then working out what on earth you might want to do next is a big challenge. For me, I think I realised I started to miss the world of science a bit more than I probably appreciated leaving it for my PhD. I knew I wanted to stay in Cambridge, and so I was looking for jobs in science and tech in Cambridge, but I knew I probably didn't want to go back to academia for the reasons we talked about. So I was looking at things like techie startups, looking at some financial jobs. In the end, I had a few friends who work in VC in London, and they talk about their jobs that they do, and it was something quite interesting. And then a few months later, this position was posted, and so it's luck again, but with a bit more of a plan and sort of biding your time and being patient and eventually going for what makes sense.
I think the next question is very specifically for Priscilla and me. What would have been the most helpful during your maternity leave to smooth the return to academia? Is there something the university could have done, the government, the personal environment?
I guess that one of the things that would have helped is the mind, so the academic environment in general. You need to be supported and that people understand what you are going through, which is not the case. So people don't understand what you're going through, or they don't care, or they be like, no, they don't care, and they think that you should be a home child instead of coming back to academia. They regard you like weaker, they don't give you the same academic knowledge that the rest of the peers, despite they have more experience or was in a senior position. So when I came back, that was the difficulty. I had to start from square one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was very hard, but yeah, I think that there is a long road to go, but at least the road is there. So it's starting. Before it wasn't, it's being paved. I think that that's the disconnection between family is there. And if we don't build a bridge with awareness and positions like mine, where we facilitate the return of academia people that have been in academia careers, that's it.
Yeah, so I'll just add a quick, for me, I had my children after I'd already left academia, but there was a massive difference between my first child. I was in a fixed term position, and it just kind of closed all doors. I remember feeling like spiraling back down to that square one, like, oh, I don't have a different career, and it's just gone flat. Versus with my second child, I was in a permanent position and felt a lot more supported because it was, oh, you're taking a break, that's fine. We value you, you'll come back.
I think that it's a massive difference, and because academia has so many fixed-term positions, whether you're doing your PhD or you're a postdoc, it presents a challenge. Okay, well, thank you all of you for your questions. Immense thanks to the panelists. We're going to now quickly switch over to our second group of panelists, but all of these guys are going to be here for the mingling afterwards. So let's give them a round of applause. Next group of panelists, and I think myself included, let's be a bit careful to use the mics because I think it's not as audible in the back. So we'll start with Eloy. I think, yes?
Sure.
Perfect.
Right, so I think probably I'm one of the people here that has the most storied career, academic career, at least more traditional in the sense of I stick to academia since my PhD. As you can see there, I did my PhD in Spain, although I was visiting a student here in Cambridge, and since then I basically stayed with different postdoctoral positions in the university. For quite a few years, 10 years, I was going through the ladder of postdoctoral positions. So I guess I was very patient until I had the opportunity to secure a more permanent academic career through a fellowship and then a faculty position here in Cambridge. I guess the one thing that that makes it a bit more spicy is that I had the opportunity back in 2019 to also start my own business with some colleagues, sort of coming out of the research I had done until that point and I continue to do here at the university, which is quite interesting because it also allows me to taste a bit of what industry is like. Yeah, I guess that's the summary.
Great, fantastic.
And it's Hannah now.
Hello, I'm Hannah. I am probably the most recent grad on the panels today. So I did my undergrad at Durham University, that was physics and astronomy. And in my third year summer, I did an internship at the Max Planck Institute for Astronomy, which was focused on globular clusters. I really enjoyed it, and that kind of made me want to do a PhD. Unfortunately, I started my PhD at probably the worst time. In 2020, we had to figure out how to find a supervisor via Zoom, which was less than ideal, but the PhD itself was pretty good. I also had a couple of part-time jobs just for fun during those years. So I was English as a second language tutor online, and also as a science mentor as well. And I submitted my thesis last September, Viva in January, and shortly after submitting my thesis, I started working as a researcher for an independent media / think tank called Exponential View, and it's very interesting. We research everything across all tech, so right in the forefront.
Great, thank you.
Alrighty. So I'm going to split this into 3 phases. So phase 1, academia. I did my PhD here in Cambridge, mostly doing gravitational wave astronomy and pulsar timing. I really enjoyed my PhD. Lots of collaboration with people around the world, traveling. So I applied to do a research fellowship here, got that at Trinity Hall, continue that. And then also got a Marie Curie to go to the Max Planck Institute in Bonn, but turned that down because at that point in my life I had begun was completely enamored with academia. So I went into finance, as one does at that point in one's life. So I started a startup hedge fund, joined a startup hedge fund as their sort of main algorithm developing person. And the first few years of this were great. We actually developed strategies, so you're trading live, making money, but that startup sort of failed. And that was really sad actually. I spent a long time struggling with whether or not to leave that to to go do other things, and eventually did stay in finance, doing more machine learning things, training agents to take actions in the market directly. And it was around this time that I started to learn more about AI safety. So I'd been reading about it, industrial superintelligence, had done the Blue Dot AI safety course, and the more I learned, the more pessimistic about the future I became. So I had the opportunity to lead finance and co-found a startup with some people that I knew from Cambridge. Partly this does boring banking stuff, but the more interesting part is that we're developing AI safety software to use in regulated industries like banking and eventually pharma, defense, robotics, healthcare, whatever. Basically any industry where people need to use AI and need to use it safely, which is kind of every industry. And yeah, this, it's been quite a long journey, but I've kind of at the end point already there, 2030 unemployed. This is my optimistic future.
Thank you very much. And we don't have the cleaning robots yet, so we'll all be watching Windows, I think. Peter, yes.
Okay, I finished my undergrad in physics at Leicester in 2011. Then I did a PhD in astrophysics there as well. I was on the rotation curve problem and galaxy evolution. I did a brief postdoc in Durham. It was just like a 6 months thing. But then I came to Cambridge. I was in Cavendish astrophysics until 2019. I was working on a couple of things, mostly image processing for radio interferometry. At that point, I kind of sort of a bit burned out and a bit sort of looking for something new. And mostly, it was also the fact that continuing my academic career would have required moving at that point, and I didn't want to move my family because I had 2 young children at the time. This is a fairly common problem. So I got a job locally in this company, Entrust. They are a cybersecurity company that makes this sort of very important infrastructure that you've never heard of, but you basically use every day. And then in 2021, I was looking to move on from that to basically I wasn't happy with the pay. I went through a recruiter and actually I got recommended this job at the Laboratory of Molecular Biology. I wasn't looking to get back into science, but it just sort of happened. And now I work on studying the brains of Drosophila larvae. You may have seen on the BBC, there's a news article about the Drosophila connectome. That's the adult brain. We work on the larval brain. So at the moment I'm working on electron microscopy imaging. What I was doing originally in astrophysics, I was looking at stuff on kiloparsec scales, where you have to image the brains at about 8 nanometer resolution to get the synapses. So I worked out today I've gone down in the scale of my interest by 26 orders of magnitude. And also there's a little thing in the corner. I started a blog around about the time I finished the Cavendish. It was about space exploration and colonization. And it was just sort of it was just something that was interesting. It was in the news, and I thought I could probably talk about this with a bit more sort of technical depth than most people. But it kind of took off a bit, and it actually earns me a little bit of money now. Mostly it's given me sort of opportunities to network with people who are actually sort of working full-time in that sector. And I've actually got sort of even some paid consultancy work off it. And I've also ended up working with the X Prize Foundation. I don't know if you know about that. I was they sort of put me on a committee to help design the next sort of prize for the space industry to try and stimulate things. So that's sort of, it's a really interesting side gig that just sort of came out by accident.
Fantastic, thanks Peter. And last but not least, we have Gina.
Hello everyone, can you hear me okay? Cool. First, thank you so much for having me. And I just must say, I'm feeling a little poorly, just in case I fall off of this high chair. Let's see who of these guys will catch me first. Right, so I did my undergrad in maths and physics in Lebanon. And then I went on to do a master's in physics at the American University of Beirut. Any people from Lebanon in the room? No. Okay. then after my master's degree, mind you, this is the American system, so it's quite long. After my master's degree, I did my PhD in astrophysics. So at that point, I wasn't sure what to do after that, because in my group there were no postdocs. I wasn't sure what a next good step would be for me, whether to go into teaching or to do a postdoc. But then I eventually decided to do a postdoc. I came to Cambridge, and the wonderful, I did a gig as a lecturer at the American University of Beirut for about a year. And then I came to the IOA, which is a lovely place. Yes, lots of Canadian people. Any IOA guys? Yeah. You know, the Institute of Astronomy is a wonderful place to be. So I worked there for a couple of years as a postdoc. I managed a group. We did, my specialty is stellar evolution, stellar structure and evolution, and my group was myself, a senior postdoc, a professor, a PhD student, and a person from industry who was our software engineer, because you know astronomers don't make the best software, so we hired a professional to do that. And then I was at a turning point, because I really, really loved the research. I loved the place I was working. I loved my group. But I've heard it from one of the panelists before. I felt like I lacked impact. I mean, understandably, what we do is so detached from what happens here on Earth, unless you're launching rockets or you're working on a next Mars mission. But I felt like I lacked impact. I felt a bit isolated. My PI at the time jokingly said, when I said, look, I really need to see more people, to engage with more people, and he did suggest I go work from Tesco's every now and then. But I didn't do that. But the thing is that I decided I will either continue to work with this group because I liked it so much and I loved my work. And if that doesn't work, so I applied for more funding because the funding ran out. And I said, if I don't get that funding, I'm going to change. So at that time, exoplanets were the sexy thing, so stars didn't get any funding, so I had to change. At that point, towards the end of my postdoc years, I was working in a kind of advisory consultancy capacity with the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs. How cool is that name? And I helped them launch a Space for Women network. And if you've worked at all with the UN or know anything about the UN, things take a very long time to happen. So, and the network that we were working on happened, but like 2-3 years later. But I'm someone who works on much faster timescales. I was thinking, I need to do something now. There was a lot of talk about storytelling, about mentorship, things like that. So at that time, I started She Speaks Science, because it's that, storytelling and mentorship, to bring science closer to the society and to amplify women's voices. So I did that. Now, when I did this is an entrepreneurial endeavor, although it wasn't really like a business in a strict sense. It's just more of a social venture. But that got me thinking about, I was going to the Judge Business School, doing entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship courses, and this is where I got into that space. Now, at that point, I was also with the Postdoc Academy or Postdoc Committee, a wonderful committee and community. And I was at a research culture conference where I saw my yoga instructor there. I was like, what's she doing here? Turns out she's a chemist, and she's building programs for academics at the Judge Business School entrepreneurship program. And I told her about what I've been doing, and she said, I need someone to raise women for me. And this is about building entrepreneurial capacity in for women in STEM. So I joined as a consultant at the Judge Business School. I built that, and then we launched the program in end of 2019. 2020, what happened? The pandemic happened, so we paused that. I was roped into another flagship program called Price Tech, which what I work on right now, among other things, and I'm hoping through the discussion I can tell you more about that, because I'm not just here to tell you about my career, I'm telling you that there's an opportunity for you there if you're interested in innovation and entrepreneurship. So that's where I am right now as education manager, running programs, doing case studies, doing all sorts of million things, and I also mentor with the European Space Agency space tech, early stage technologies, helping them find funding and pitch properly and all sorts of things. So that's me.
Great.
Thank you so much. I think we've got two slices of kind of the entrepreneurial side, working for a startup, and then also being that energy behind it. I'm going to pose a question that it's based on research creativity. So I'll start with you, Eloy. How do you balance kind of research creativity with the pressures of an academic to secure funding and manage your students and all the other responsibilities that you have?
I don't know. I mean, that is something that it's definitely one of the biggest challenges in an academic career, right? Especially when you get to faculty positions and where you have that responsibility that you need to sustain a research group. So it's not just about yourself, it's about your students, your postdocs, and quite a few other things. I think one needs to be flexible. One needs to be ready to adapt, and I guess you need to have that mindset in which you are ready to spend time when it's needed, looking for funding, making sure that those things happen, and those things that are more boring or less fun happen, while still keeping time to do the research, which is something that I self-impose on myself, having time to do research, to do the things that I really like to do, both myself with the computer and doing research, but also through talking to my students, talking to my postdocs, which is the other way to do research as a faculty person. And I think one thing that is maybe worth mentioning there is that things are changing a bit, because I have noticed since a couple of years ago that because of AI tools, I am actually able to do a lot more research than I would be able to do without those tools. And that's facilitating, I spend a lot more time doing actual research. So yeah, something a bit bright in the horizon there.
Great, fantastic. Kind of building on the theme of creativity, I know Gina and Peter, you both mentioned taking on new endeavors alongside your work. How did you manage that? How did you kind of take that forward, either the blog or the She Speaks Science?
I'm just going to say that when I built She Speaks Science, I didn't have a child. So I had a lot more time than I do now. And admittedly, since I've had Vega, I haven't been able to work much on She Speaks Science at all. So some things have to give, because I've got so many plates spinning all the time. It's just sometimes, but what happened was I wanted to do something, and that meant sometimes working through weekends. In that phase, I was prepared to give up so much time to build something I was so passionate about. It happened at the right time for me, but if I'm going to do that now, I would have found it much more difficult. But I felt like there's something needs to be done, and I was passionate about it, and I gave it my all. It wasn't easy, but when you're building something of your own, you feel so passionate about it that you're prepared to give it as much as you can. Sometimes you can't, but sometimes you manage it.
In my case, it's basically I do it when the kids are in bed. Because it's an online blog, it's not time critical, so I work during the day, I do childcare in the evenings, and when everyone's asleep, I write about space colonies. It's pretty nice. I would say that I didn't, originally it was literally just a hobby, it was just sort of, I thought I'd have an interest in the blog. And I didn't expect it to become something I would put hours into and sort of force myself to write when I didn't feel like it and things like that. It was not going to become a side gig. I essentially regret not doing it earlier. I think having multiple interests is good. Being able to sort of, I'm not sure what the right way to put it is, but sort of cultivate multiple directions because you don't know where they'll lead. And I think this is actually something I would recommend that some of you try, because I mean, I'm guessing you're all PhD students. You're
Lots of undergrads as well.
you're undergrads as well. What the knowledge and expertise you have is probably more interesting than you realise to wider people. If you look at sort of online content these days, most of it is terrible, even before they started AI generating it all. So if you actually know something, if you can actually do like a deep, long-form, informed commentary on things and educate people, there's a real sort of demand for that. You will maybe not sort of become like mega rich of it. You need to sort of become Mr. Beast and start locking people in things for that. But you might develop a small audience that really appreciates you, and you might start getting emails from like actual legitimate experts in the field telling you they like your content, which happens to be a very good feeling.
Great, that's fantastic.
Yeah, just adding to that, I mean, just paraphrasing one of the questions that was asked, which is how do you know what you want to do in life? I spent a really long time having no idea. I mean, from the age of 18, I wanted to be a video game developer, a rock star, an astronaut, and an astrophysicist, a lecturer, and now I'm working at ASIC. I spent quite a lot of my spare time just doing projects. So I went through a crypto phase, I learned how blockchains work, I built some web apps, that lasted about a year. The reality of what people want to use blockchains for, i.e. trading pictures of cats and monkeys and things, did not really align to what I had hoped people wanted to use crypto for, so I stopped doing that. And then, yeah, like the ASH thing, just on the side, alongside my job that I had at the time, just learned about it. Did the Blue Dot course, this Mars program that the Cambridge AI Safety Hub runs. It's like 8 hours a week, you can do it alongside a full-time job. You can do an actual research project, publish a paper. And there are so many opportunities to just try things alongside a job if you're agentic and have the desire to just see what you're interested in. And especially in Cambridge, there's just a huge number of opportunities in a whole load of different areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Take advantage of being in Cambridge. You can try anything in capacity while you're here. I'm going to shift gears slightly to skills and developing skills. Starting with you, Hannah. Which transferable skill took you the longest to recognize, maybe that you were unaware of when you were doing your PhD?
Sure. So I would say that it's been mentioned already in the previous panel, but being able to speak clearly and coherently about complex topics. And it's not something I necessarily realized during my PhD at all. It's something that you don't always get compliments in a PhD. But after my PhD and joining my current company, I've had multiple people come up to me and say, oh, you explained that really complicated thing very clearly, and now I know what's going on. And that is a skill that you kind of get forced to learn and improve. But it's very, very valuable, especially in what's becoming a very complex world and somewhat chaotic in some sense. So just being able to explain, I think, is the most important thing I found.
Great. Anyone else have a skill that they discovered?
Yeah, I discovered a great deal more programming skills than I thought I had. And this has already been commented on, but the quality of astronomy software is not great, mostly. So this was a bit of a culture shock when I went into the private sector and was expected to produce, software that allowed banks to keep people's money safe, and the standards were a little higher. So this is something I found I was able to develop this quite quickly, and going back into science, this was very useful. But also to mention my blog again, that like you said, that was a very good way of developing communication skills, which I have not done as much as I probably ought to have done in my undergraduate PhD. Yeah, the skills are very transferable. I've been been asked by my current boss to mention that she's looking to hire more people at the Laboratory of Molecular Biology, and we want to hire software engineers, and she's very keen to hire people from a physics background because you've got a lot of transferable skills. So if you want to sort of do something a bit different, then have a look out for that job.
I had something.
So I remember when I started my master's degree, I was my supervisor started asking me to give talks about my research, and I remember how terrifying that was at the beginning, especially in big conferences. The hardest one was the first one. It only gets easier from there. So I would really, really encourage you to take every opportunity you get to speak. So what ended up happening is that every conference I applied to, I insisted that I gave a talk. Sometimes it's just a poster, but if there's a chance to give a talk internally, I didn't want to, but I just pushed myself. And that meant developing a very, very crucial public speaking skill, which has helped me in my career. Also, someone mentioned about all the different projects you get involved in. When I was doing my postdoc, actually, I got involved in physical theatre. I did physical theatre, and that helped me with improvisation. Also, tackling questions, thinking on your feet. So sometimes you're doing things on the side that you think has no relevance to your career eventually, but you'd be surprised how much that transferable that is.
Just a quick one, is the agency thing again. I didn't really realise how useful not waiting for people to give you things to do, but just finding things to do and doing them is in real life outside of academia. I mean, as an example, a friend of mine, he was doing a master's in neuroscience, was getting concerned about AI development and the risks associated with that. So he just started to learn about it, learn less wrong. He read a blog post by someone from Petrovic describing a paper that they'd written. That blog post had some example things that that person was interested in seeing people do. He wasn't a big coder, he used AI tools, he did one of the things, he posted about it. Now, 18 months, 2 years on, he's co-running an AI safety research organisation at Cambridge. He's applying for and getting grants from OpenPhil and the UK ICE Security Institute. And it's just like, just doing things is super helpful.
Anyone wants to ask one another?
How can you write a blog after putting the children in bed?
Coffee. Lots of coffee.
Because she's in bed, I'm in bed. Straight away.
I've always been a night owl.
Partially related to that question, you mentioned also working on weekends and working after putting the kids to bed, which I've done in the past as well myself. In my case, those things, I think I realized that there was a correlation between that realization and doing better in my career, and I think being more productive and more successful is when I realized that I had to put my mental health and my personal well-being on top of everything else. In academia, as a lot of you will know, it's very easy to fall down that slope of not taking care of yourself and maybe working too much, too many hours, and your personal life becomes not so important. I have been there, and there is a clear correlation in my case between the realization that that could not continue, that I had to put my well-being first and my mental health first, and I self-imposed that I will never work on weekends and never work after hours at home, which of course means you have to sacrifice things. You may, in the case of academia, write less papers or other things. But that eventually translated into me feeling better and me actually being more productive with the less time I was spending. So I think that definitely helped my career, I can say that.
Yeah, fantastic advice, and I think we've all learned in different ways as we've progressed through our careers. Are there any questions from the audience? And then I'll take a look at the Mentimeter as well. Yeah.
Thank you. I just, because I'm also a mother for 2 years old, and I'm wondering how, because my husband, he also a PhD student, and we both want to stay in academia in the future. So it will be kind of hard to kind of apply postdoc in the same university or things like that. So do you face these kind of situations when you and your partner want to kind of apply for new jobs, and then like these kind of two-body problems? And how do you solve this?
The two-body problem is an unsolved problem, and it is think it's always there, and it's not an easy one. In my case, but this is a very personal case that I don't think it's easily translated to everyone else's case here. As I said, maybe one of the features that defined my career is that I was a lot more patient than most of my peers in staying and having the uncertainty that the career path I was trying to follow was offering me, right? A lot of uncertainty in academia, it has been mentioned by my colleagues here and by others, which also resulted in me and my partner and my family being able to stay in the same place for longer at the expense of that uncertainty. Eventually, it got resolved, right? But certainly, I don't think there is an easy solution to that problem, especially when you are two people. It is something that will be faced, I think, by most people in academia.
Yeah, absolutely. My partner is also a research astronomer. I left my postdoc very sure that I didn't want to do research, but he was a postdoc for about 7.5 years. And it actually ended up being my career that drove the decision, because we could have moved somewhere and he probably would have gotten a permanent academic post. But I said I don't want to leave the Cambridge community and the Cambridge life that I've built here. So he shifted. He's an environmental consultant now. So a lot of it does kind of come down to the circumstances and kind of what your values and priorities are when you make those decisions. And that's a hard thing to kind of predict, because things change, you change as a person. So it's a little bit of kind of reflecting from time to time to kind of say, okay, what's important to us individually right now and as a couple, and what's going to be the best thing for, I think it's a big body problem, not just you and me, but you, me, and us, right? It's all three of those. And there's not a solution.
Could I add something, Sonali? I don't have that problem. My husband doesn't work in academia, he has a new job. But I have lots of friends and colleagues who had that issue. What I've seen is that a lot of institutions are able to hire you both or find a job for the other partner. So someone gets hired as a lecturer, they find a job for the other person, so arrangements could be made. And I've even seen couples move abroad, like from the US or the other way around. And one of them, though, has to make a small sacrifice usually and maybe change track or take a job that wouldn't necessarily be their first choice to make that work. But it's doable, especially if you approach the employer saying, hey, my partner does this, can you find them a job as well? You see what I mean? So that conversation can also always happen.
I didn't actually have the two-boundary problem because my wife is a teacher, so she can work basically anywhere in the country. It wouldn't be hard to move abroad because her qualifications don't travel well, and that's the case for a lot of people. For me, the reason I decided not to carry on moving around was children. My youngest has got special needs, and in his environment, you have to he was in a special school. It's not good to keep moving him around. This is, like you said, is an unsolved problem, even when just we have to worry about the children. It's not good. I think that the academia needs to change in this respect, but on the timescale of your careers, it probably won't. So unfortunately can't give any good news on that. There is good news that if you're in Cambridge, there's lots of sort of adjacent jobs that would be suitable for an academic. And that's what I did in the end. So yeah, sorry, I've been a downer, unfortunately.
Not at all. I think realism is part of the beauty of these panels. There was a question from the audience. For those of you that left academia, do you ever wish that you had stayed? Hannah's giving a resounding no.
So, I mean, I started in the pandemic, the PhD, and I guess even before I went into the PhD, part of me was thinking that, there's a lot of problems globally that we could be focusing, like I could be spending my time on instead. And it was always kind of playing in my mind. So even though I enjoyed, I would say, I enjoyed the PhD, the first couple of years I was like, okay, this is good. And then I would say end of second year, I kind of decided mentally that I would leave. And I wanted to do something that was much more focused on society, maybe able to help people, while still maintaining like the scientific aspect. So I am researching everything from AI through to robotics, new energy, and so on. And being able to have that contact, I guess, with society is really quite rewarding.
Yeah, hard no. I think, as I said, I mean, I also love my PhD, and it was pretty cool, right? Like gravitational waves, supermassive black holes, these are cool things. But when I look back, and I just think, well, what did this do for the world? What did I actually achieve here? And now, in working in AI safety, I mean, personally, I think that one can argue this is like the most important problem that humans will ever need to solve, right? The transition to superintelligent AI systems. And no, I don't regret changing to go into that.
So now you can add something to this. Great. So I miss it. I miss the research because I loved it so much. I'm so nostalgic sometimes, especially when a colleague researcher posts about their research. I'm always curious. The thing for me is that I still engage with academia because at the Judge Business School, one of the programs I run called Inference, it's working with academics commercialize their science. And so I work with people in physics department, chemistry, genetics. So I'm very much still involved in academia. Now the difference is that I get to make I see impact, right? Because these inventions are coming into the market, into people's lives. So you get to see the impact of this academic research. And this is where I probably should add that if you're interested in innovation and entrepreneurship and it's a skill you want to build, please do come speak to me. I will also leave you flyers here about the program if you're looking at expanding your career options after your degree or PhD or during your postdoc even.
Great. Some of the questions online are quite specific to our panelists, so I think what we're going to do now is wrap up the group session. Can everyone join me in just giving a massive round of applause to all the panelists? There is a short feedback survey. If you could all just take a moment to fill that out, that would be fantastic. It helps us to keep programs like this running. And all the panelists are sticking around for at least the next 20-30 minutes, I think, 20 minutes. So feel free to grab a drink and a snack and ask away, and best of luck to you. Thank you.